mistake about it, Christian rock music is big business. From its humble origins as an underground movement in the 80s, it exploded into the mainstream in the 90s and continues to draw a lot of water to this day. In this video I will focus on the music and musicians of Hillsong. If you're unfamiliar with Hillsong, they are a Pentecostal megachurch, a division of the Australian branch of Assemblies of God founded by Brian Houston, the son of Pastor Frank Houston. In 2000, Frank confessed to having sexually abused a minor some 30 years previously, and as a result was fired by his son Brian, who is now the president of Assemblies of God Australia. Hillsong is also a record label, specialising, unsurprisingly, in Christian contemporary music. Using the people power of their congregation, Hillsong have managed to enter the Australian charts regularly. They have been looked upon unfavourably for alleged vote stacking in Australian Idol, though the show's producers deny this. Some of the congregation have admitted to it. I can't help but feel that when a church sets itself up as a record label, they are in violation of John 2:16, and said unto them that sold doves, Take these things hence, make not my Father's house an house of merchandise. However, as we shall discover, making God's house a house of merchandise is small potatoes compared to what happened with one of Hillsong's artists in 2008. In the last video in this series, I closed with a picture of Michael Guglielmucci. Guglielmucci is the former bass player of Christian rock band The Planet Shakers, and is also famous for his solo song Healer, which featured on the Hillsong compilation CD This Is Our God. The son of Pastor Danny Guglielmucci, Michael, as you'd expect, had a Christian upbringing, attending Christian youth group and getting involved in Christian music, eventually leading to him touring various schools with his band, preaching to young people via the medium of Christian rock music. In 2006, it was announced that Michael Guglielmucci was suffering from terminal cancer. Over the course of the next 2 years, he was seen to perform with a shaven head and wearing oxygen tubes. He composed the song Healer about his struggle with the disease, which reached number 2 in the ARIA charts. Quite a compelling tale in many ways. However,
we begin tonight with the Adelaide preacher who's conned his way into the lives and hearts of tens of thousands of his Christian followers. Michael Guglielmucci, for 2 years, deceived not only his church, but his wife and family, making them all believe he was dying of cancer. He even released a motivational hit single that won a place on a chart-topping album. It was yet another of his charades packed with lies. Well, now the conman's confessed, and in his only interview tonight asks for forgiveness. Sharon Smith spoke with Guglielmucci, who received no payment for any part of this story.
A man who suffered, who knew pain firsthand.
I've been living a lie for a long time.
He took the punishment, and that made us whole.
I feel very cheesy.
It was just unbelievable.
We had no idea whatsoever.
When you hear, you're going to die, or, this is terminal, get your affairs in order, there's not a lot you can do.
It could have been the answer to a prayer. A young man struck down in the prime of life with a terminal illness.
I went to the hospital expecting to have some tests and got the news that I had cancer, and quite an aggressive form of cancer.
So he writes a song expressing his faith that God will heal him and calls on believers to use the power of prayer. And it becomes a runaway hit and inspires thousands of believers. The young man is 29-year-old Mike Guglielmucci, originally from Adelaide. Now based in Sydney, for the past 2 years he's used his ailment to spread his inspirational messages in churches across Australia, including one of the country's biggest, Hillsong in Sydney. And his story and word of his courage has spread across the world.
But it was our sins that did that to him.
The only problem is it's not true. Mike Guglielmucci isn't dying of cancer. The whole story was a lie.
To the best of my knowledge, I'm well.
So you're saying you don't have cancer?
To the best of my knowledge, no, I don't. I've never had, a doctor hasn't diagnosed me with cancer, no.
So you've been conning people all this time?
I've been living a lie for more than just 2 years.
For 2 years, Guglielmucci convinced the world, including those closest to him, he was dying of cancer.
I've been hiding who I am for so long. I've told too many people how they should live their lives.
Now he's decided to confess all.
I can honestly say to you, the last 2 years have been hell for me physically, emotionally, but I never sat down and went, okay, let's get through this facade, or let's try and fool the world.
And take the message!
Guglielmucci says he was plagued with guilt and got caught up in his own web of lies.
It's not as if you sit there and plan that this is the next move and we'll be right, and I'm sitting there, you know, snickering to myself. And I know I've caused so many people so much pain, but I'm done. I can't keep living like I am.
Just for a moment I thought, oh, you don't have cancer? It's like the relief was amazing, and then all of a sudden the shock of what he just said and the consequences of that put us into another form of grieving.
His family's been left reeling over his confession, including devastated Father Danny, who founded the Edge Church in Adelaide.
We had no idea. We only grieved. That's what we did. We grieved at the possible loss of a son.
Thinking his son was dying, Guglielmucci Sr. had even begun to plan his son's funeral.
We've had 2 years of that pain. So as a father, I don't know how to say this other than I'm so happy that he's alive and now can get help, but very devastated by the damage that it's caused.
Guglielmucci admitted going to great lengths to keep up the charade, deceiving his wife and even his own mother, sending phony emails from non-existent medical practitioners.
I did email my mum a few times and say to her, Mike's going to be okay, trying to alleviate, I suppose, the stress in her.
He maintained the subterfuge by having them drop him off at the hospital, but never accompany him inside.
They were things I would report to them myself and just say, oh yeah, I've had some tests and everything's okay, or I've had some tests and everything's not okay.
And his fraudulent performances before thousands came complete with oxygen bottle and mask, fueling his congregation's emotions of sympathy and prayer, though he says he did have unexplained symptoms virtually all his life.
The oxygen I had to help me breathe, I struggled to breathe, I lost my hair.
And while the diagnosis was bogus, he insists his symptoms were real.
I don't know how you can fake vomiting all over yourself for night after night after night. I'm not that good an actor.
Thousands were conned and bought his song on CD and through iTunes, while the album reached #2 on the ARIA charts.
At times it was hard to sing because I'm watching people with tears streaming down their face singing.
With so many sucked in by Guglielmucci's story, royalties are expected in the hundreds of thousands.
I don't have any desire to attain any financial gain from that. We're already making stages and to sign those royalties over.
I believed every single word he said, and I can tell you now he's a very good liar.
Alex Saint is a former member of the Edge Church. He donated money to Guglielmucci's cause and feels betrayed by his deception.
Well, it really hurts me, just personally, I guess, seeing my mum go through cancer and having died from it.
We are starting to get now some responses of anger. How could this happen, and why did this happen? And really we don't know how it could happen or why it happened, because in a sense we are victims like anybody else.
Alan Davies is Vice President of Australian Christian Churches, the denomination to which Guglielmucci belongs.
We're receiving calls now from every continent of the world, basically because Michael's influence was very widespread.
Although he can understand why some would feel betrayed, if not outraged by Guglielmucci's actions, he's urging forgiveness. But Guglielmucci admits it's not the first time he's deceived his nearest and dearest, all to cover up a fondness for pornography.
This is who I am, and I'm addicted to this stuff, and it consumes my mind.
And he knows it's something people outside the church may not understand.
Growing up in a Christian home, being involved in Christian youth group and involved even in ministry, there was a great level of shame attached to that.
What connection and obsession with pornography has to perpetrating such a fraud on the faithful is hard to fathom.
I would report, hey, I'm sick and this is why, because I had to come up with some sort of explanation for what was happening in my body.
Yesterday, his father addressed his shattered congregation, confessing his son's sins.
In September of 2006, Mike had an accident and went to hospital. It was at this time, because of his torment of living a double life, Mike thought he could escape the pain by creating a diversion from his addiction to adult pornography, so he created the cancer scenario.
And promising to somehow make good the money so dishonestly acquired.
For those of you who have given money because of his sickness, we will do everything and are willing to pay everything back.
It was a very big shock, very big shock. But, you know, we're human and these things happen.
Shocked, more than anything else. And it just made sense after all the years that I've known him, from being from primary school right through. It just made sense, just that he was very good at what he did, which was deceiving.
It was a big shock, but, you know, we can't hold it against him. We've all sinned.
Guglielmucci is now having psychiatric and other medical tests to work out what, if anything, is wrong with him. He's been asked to donate the song royalties to charity, while today his lawyer contacted police.
We will do whatever has to put this right, and if that's what we have to do, that's what we'll do.
And I'm so sorry. Not just for lying to my friends and my family, and even about a sickness, but I'm sorry for a life of saying I was something when I'm not. From this day on, I'm telling the truth.
In many ways, it's tempting to judge Michael Guglielmucci, the guy who lied about having cancer. It's been suggested by some that the bouts of severe vomiting and difficulty breathing he passed off as symptoms of cancer weren't real. Actually, they were real, they just weren't symptoms of cancer. Rather, they were symptoms of his own disgust with himself for liking pornography. Adult pornography, not child pornography or animal pornography. Guglielmucci was disgusted with himself for liking to look at naked adults, something that is perfectly healthy and normal, yet can be made to feel unhealthy and abnormal when one is brought up in an ideology which says so. In many ways, Michael Guglielmucci is a victim of his religion.